Good afternoon. Today we're going to talk about human factors training or usability engineering training. A lot of companies think that, oh, well, human factors is this thing and usability engineering is this thing. If you actually look in the standard, IEC 62366, in that standard, they actually use the terms synonymously. They say these two are the same thing. So the debate can be closed. You don't have to argue whether it's human factors engineering or usability engineering. In the standard, it's the same. Now, historically, the FDA uses the term human factors more, and European or international sources tend to use the term usability more, but the intent is the same, the meaning is the same. So, why make such a big deal about training in the first place? Okay, yes, I have a usability engineering procedure or a human factors procedure, and I read it and I understand it and I signed and dated it. Is that enough? Absolutely not. Not even close. The reason why is when we first came out with the standard, we didn't have it embedded in our design process. We had design that was developed way back then in 1990s. We were using 1994 technology for the waterfall diagram. We had design controls was implemented by the FDA in 1996. We didn't even have software requirements, let alone usability requirements. And it's only recently that we've been enforcing at the FDA. I gotta share this. Somebody just put in a cool comment. I love it. Made me laugh. Let me share. So that's because human factors engineering sounds cooler. So I'll let you vote in the comments below on that one. But thank you, Matthew. Very funny. And probably true. So the reason why it's not enough just to read and understand this procedure, you have to do these activities as part of your design process. If you don't incorporate usability and human factors into the design process, you won't have the documents at the end of the process that you need. And unlike, so let's take, for example, I didn't put in my design inputs, I didn't even sign my design inputs. I didn't say that we had to do biocompatibility, but I was smart enough to pick materials that were biocompatible. That's how most companies tend to operate. But that doesn't really work for human factors. For human factors, you have to identify what the use errors are and show that you've done some sort of activities that you planned and documented to show that the risk controls that you considered work to reduce that use-related risk or use error. If you don't have that, you can't complete the usability engineering file. So companies are facing like, but I don't know how to do it. We didn't have that in there. So you have to go back to when you were first thinking of this design, you said, well, if we do it that way, it'll cause a use error, or it could cause a use error. So we'll eliminate that by design. And you take credit for that. You show before implementing risk controls, we have this use error. We eliminate it by design, and now it's no longer a potential use error because we eliminated it completely. But you take credit for that in your use-related risk analysis. So if you don't have a list of known use errors for your competitor product or previous versions of the product, and you haven't identified those use errors, and you haven't done any kind of formative testing to show how these risk controls work, you can't show that you eliminated that by design. You don't even have it documented anywhere as a risk. So when you go to do the submission, they're like, well, where's your known use errors? Oh, we don't have it. Where's your usability engineering file? Don't have it. Where's your formative testing? Don't have it. And then companies ask me, how can I get out of doing summative testing with 15 users? Well, we could go back in time. We'll get our time machine, and we'll go back and we'll identify that as a known use error, and we'll do the formative testing, and then we'll do the summative testing and show it work. But if you don't have a time machine, you're kind of out of luck. So you need to be developing your usability engineering plan or human factors engineering plan at the same time you're developing your design plan, your risk management plan, your cybersecurity plan, your software development plan, all those things, they're planning activities that occur at the beginning of your project. And when you identify hazards, so you do hazard identification, and you list out those 27 questions or something. Maybe it's 37, but a whole bunch of questions in 24971. You answer all those questions. They help you identify hazards, and you look through the mod database and TPLC database. You find a bunch of hazards. That's a search for known use errors. You got to document those. You also have other types of risks, not just use errors, but you also have software errors, bugs. There's a whole list of them, 6 pages in a table listing typical hazards associated with software. That's in a standard. You have all those questions I talked about in the 24971 guidance document about risks. You have to do those as your identification of risks and hazards and hazardous situations. At the second phase, these are the inputs from risk management activities, the risk management process. That's where that stuff comes in. It's the hazard identification process. And then you have to evaluate the various risk controls you're considering. That's called risk control option analysis. And you do formative testing to show these risk controls eliminate or reduce use errors. You got to have data to show that you actually did that. You got to have a plan, you got to identify the risks, and then you got to do the testing to show that which one works best. And then you implement that as a final risk control in your design freeze, and then you do your summative testing. That's what goes in your usability engineering file. It's not just paperwork you do at the end. If you didn't do those activities and go through those steps, you're out of luck. So anybody, and I mean anyone that's involved in design, should have basic training on usability and human factors engineering so they know that these activities need to be done and they can participate in them. Now, you're not going to get all that information and really absorb it by reading it once in a procedure, particularly if you have a high-level procedure without a lot of detail. And the standard is fairly long. You could read that. How well you'll absorb it, I don't know. But you really need somebody to train you. You need somebody that gives you templates, gives you procedures, gives you work instructions, gives you examples, and walks you through it. And you should do it by phase. Here's what I need to know for phase 1 of the usability engineering plan. Here's what I need for phase 2. Here's what I need for phase 3. Same thing with risk, cybersecurity, software, and design. Look at it just by the phase. What do I need for this phase? First phase, I need planning. Second phase, I need requirements, hazard identification. Third phase, I'm doing development. I'm testing out different risk controls, seeing what options work best. Then I freeze them. Then I do my V&V testing, and then I submit. That's the process. You have to document it, but you can't do the software validation at the end, the usability at the end, the risk management file at the end. It doesn't work. They have to be from the beginning. Besides, your usability engineering file, your risk management file, and your software validation have to be done before you can start your electrical safety V&V testing. So you had to do it earlier anyway than other types of V&V like electrical safety. So if you have an electromedical device, you're not going to get out of this. Now, here's the solution to the problem. We need training. We don't have a procedure, or we have a procedure, but we don't have anybody to do the training. Our company put together a training series on human factors. And Matthew, who made the comment earlier about human factors engineering sounds cooler, he's also the person that did the training. So as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of funny stuff in there too. He has this awesome video on NyQuil chicken. So check out his YouTube channel on human factors engineering. It's absolutely awesome. But he did a whole bunch of videos. I did some videos. We put the whole thing together as a training package. So the page that I'm showing here on the right, this is our human factors process cornerstone page where we have all the resources to human factors in our company. So we talk about the 10 steps of the human factors process. We have a slide deck you can download about it. And then we have this training series. So you can buy all the trainings individually as you go, or you can just buy the whole series. When you buy our packages, they can be used to train your whole company. So if that's what you want to do, you want to train your whole company, your whole design team on this, you can go right to this. And it's this first one at the top. You want to click on that. Here's the training series. I already have it pulled up. And we're discounting it to $750 for March. So if you buy it this month, you save yourself $200. For people that have not already bought our usability engineering procedure, that's included. For people that already bought our usability procedure, we should have already sent out a notification to you of a discount. So you should already have the email. So look in your email inbox for maybe human factors. And that's how you will find it. At the end of the month, April 1st, and this isn't an April 1st joke, April 1st, it goes up to $950. What you're getting in here is a ton of videos, a ton of templates, a ton of content for you. And you can train your whole team and take them through step 1, step 2, step 3. And I've even numbered the templates. Like this is template 1. You use this first, the use specification. Template 2, the search for known use errors. Fill that in second. Third, you do a task analysis. You identify all the use cases that have critical tasks that you're going to validate in your summative testing. Next, you're going to create a use-related risk analysis. If you've missed it, there's a URRA, a new 4-letter acronym the FDA came up with for that risk analysis. Your old risk analysis that you have for software, that's not going to cut it. And then the next thing on the list is you're going to come up with a protocol for your summative testing and then your final report after you conduct the testing. And somewhere in there, while you're doing that use-related risk analysis, you're doing the option controls, that's where you're going to do that formative testing. And that is less formal, but you need to document some kind of activity where you're evaluating different risk controls and seeing how they work. And we have another person on our team here that made a little comment here that I will share. So thank you, Rochelle. Thank you for emphasizing the need to have human factors, risk deliverables completed prior to electrical safety. Great point. So that's definitely something that needs to be drilled into people. These are not activities that you're doing just at the end for documentation purposes. It won't work. You have to show, to be compliant, you have to show that you've gone through the process and you've evaluated different risk controls and shown that they work and identified were there any other risks or hazards that are use related that we hadn't thought of. Sometimes there are. Sometimes, it was really easy for the guy that designed it, but the guy that the guy or woman that's actually using the device, not so easy, and because they didn't design it. It's not intuitive to them because they're not the designer. So that's a pretty common thing. When you do formative testing, you identify new use errors that you hadn't thought of, and you're like, we should have expected that, but we didn't. So definitely, please incorporate into your training program for all your design team, incorporate usability and human factors engineering into it. Buy IEC 62366. The EVS.EE site is the cheapest place to buy it. Buy a multi-user license so you can share it amongst your entire team and watch the videos step by step, incorporate it into your design plan. Because you will need, as Rochelle reinforced here, you will need, number 1, you'll need your risk management file. Number 2, you need your usability engineering file. And number 3, you need your software validation before you can even start that electrical safety testing to 6601-1. And Rochelle has another point here. Thank you, Rochelle. Great point. Same with the IFU. If you wrote your IFU, it's clear to you, perhaps not clear to the layperson or healthcare provider. So on the point of IFUs or instruction for use, one of the things that I tell people, they're like, well, do we have to finalize our instruction for use before we do the testing? Yes and no. You'd like it to be final, but part of the reason why you're doing the testing is to see if it's final or there are still some use errors, things that need to be clarified. So one of the questions we like to include in our questions at the end of an interview with any subject that's involved in a summative usability study, is there anything in the instructions that weren't clear, that could be improved? Any suggestions? Anything that was difficult to understand? Those are questions we ask at the end of the summative testing. We don't ask it before because we don't want to bias them. We don't ask them during because we don't want to interrupt the flow of the use case. Wait until they're done with the use case, whether they passed or failed, then we ask that question and ask them, we encourage them, like, is there anything here we could improve? And some people will just automatically answer, no, there's nothing you can improve. Are you sure? There isn't anything that was difficult to understand, too big of words, pictures would be helpful. It was not clear until the next page or something, so maybe we could change the order. Those are the kinds of things you want to ask during these summative tests at the end to try to get that feedback. So if you do have a use error or you have some of that feedback, those would be reasons why you would make edits to your IFU. So we say to the FDA, here's the version we use for the summative testing, here's the final version, and the changes are redlined here, and we made these changes in response to feedback in the testing. Now, if we had to completely overhaul it, then that would be a situation where we probably have to repeat the testing, but we wouldn't completely overhaul it unless you failed the test in the first place. So if you're passing it, we don't want to make big changes, little itty bitty changes. And we have one more comment here by Matthew. Awesome. Good thing human factors engineering stops after you get your 510K. That is a trick question, or is setting you up? Absolutely not. So just like all your other risk management activities you do, that last step, clause 10 in ISO 14971, is you do post-market and post-production data collection to go back and figure out what things aren't working well. That goes for human factors as well. You're required in clause 8.2.1 and 1345 to do post-market surveillance. You're required to have a cybersecurity post-market surveillance plan. You're required to review complaints and identify bugs in your product, if it's software. And you're required to review any complaints in general and implement CAPAs if your investigation determines that's what's needed. And for human factors, you should also be asking, is there anything about the instructions that are hard to understand, such as all the technical support questions you're getting at your call center? That's what we're talking about. Technical support questions mean something's not clear, something's not intuitive, some training's needed. So whenever you go on a new site and you onboard a new hospital, they ask a whole bunch of questions. If they're not already covered in your best practices and in training modules for how to in-service a new hospital, maybe you need to be post-market surveillance to verify that your use-related risk controls are working and identify ones that are missing, new use errors that have been encountered, such as there's a new accessory that's been introduced and that's screwed things up. It happens all the time. There's a new version of Windows. There's a new version of iOS. There's a new Android phone. There's now I have two-factor authentication and nothing works anymore. All these things are real. They happen all the time to companies, and you have to continuously update your list of use errors and your risk controls and constantly monitor that. And if you're having a whole bunch of adverse events that are near misses because somebody didn't do what your instructions say, the FDA doesn't say, oh, that's a dumb customer, that's a user error. That's not what they say. They say it's a use error. It's the company's responsibility to identify a trend here and come up with a risk control that will prevent that use error. And it could be training, but you have to validate the training. It could be redesign the product so it's intuitive. So it's not, they don't make that use error. They can't make that use error. That's what you should be doing. So good prompt. Thank you, Matthew. And that's the kind of useful tidbits we have in here. One of my favorite videos is the last one we did on how to write a report. And it's like, you have an 8-section report. The FDA tells you got to have all these 8 sections. And on the last section, that's where the data is from your summative testing. The first 7 is boilerplate from your previous work that you've done. So you could actually write 7/8 of your report before you actually start the study. But people are like, how long is it going to take to write the report? Well, depends on when you start. If you start now, you'll be done with 7/8 of the report before you start the summative testing. And maybe on the plane ride home, you can finish the report. If you started after you finish the study, it's going to take you a lot longer. So that's the little tidbits that we throw in these trainings. So you're getting a lot of value here, a lot of advice from people like Rochelle and myself and Matthew on how to do this and when to do it. And we give you the templates and the training materials so you can train your entire design team on this. Instead of paying $100,000 to $200,000 to have a human factors lab do it all for you. Hand it to you on a silver platter. You'll know nothing, and you won't know that you need to do post-market surveillance. So I hope that helps. And if you're interested, just go to our website and type in human factors in the search, and you'll find the first thing will be the human factors guidance. That was a brand new blog that we posted this last week or this week. Number 2 will be that 10 steps to the human factors process. And the third one will be the human factors training series, which is discounted. And it's also on our webinars page. There's a link for it there in all our human factors products. So I hope this helps for those people that don't understand why they keep on getting these deficiencies from the FDA and their notified bodies auditors. It's because you haven't incorporated human factors into your design process. It's an afterthought you're doing at the end instead of making it a fundamental part of your training and activities. We got one more comment from Rochelle, so I'll include that. Good to remember that a use error is a user action or lack of action that was different from that was expected by the manufacturer. Rochelle, are you sharing notes with Matthew that he's used the exact same quote on me? This is a good quote, but I swear Matthew has given me that same quote. So it can be a use error if what occurred is different from what you expected. So sometimes it's just not what the user expected, and that is a use error. So great. And for people that don't know what use errors are, sometimes they don't even recognize them, and that's why. It's because they're not identifying things that were unexpected as use errors. So thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, Matthew, for participating as well. And thank you, everybody, for watching our live video. If you found this helpful, please share it with everybody else on your design team, and hopefully you'll take a look at our videos here. You can buy it one at a time, or you can buy the whole package. So see you later. Have a great weekend, and hope we helped.